My special guest with us today is Katherine McNamara. She is passionate about reading. She has starred in many well known shows like Shadowhunters, Arrow, and Maze Runner, but she's most well known for being the lead actress Clary on Shadowhunters. The show has won 16 Choice Awards, 5 People's Choice Awards, and she's also won People's Choice Award for Female TV Star of the Year 2018, Teen Choice Award for Choice TV Actress Fantasy Sci-Fi 2019. Thank you so much, Kat, for taking time out of your busy schedule to promote reading in today's youth.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
How did you get started in reading? Like, who or what got you interested in reading?
It's interesting. I can't remember a time where I didn't love reading and I didn't love stories. And I think a lot of that's due to my mom and my grandparents. They were always reading me stories or telling me stories or making up stories and silly things to entertain me. And that kind of kickstarted that. But what really got me into reading specifically was my preschool teacher. And her name was Miss
Oh,
Vicky. And she mind and completely opened up my world to education as a whole. She saw that I had this kind of love of knowledge and of reading, and anything she put in front of me, I would just eat it up instantly. And I just very distinctly remember she pulled me aside one day and handed me a book that at the time I thought was like a big kid's book. I was probably 3, but she hands it to me and she goes, it didn't have very many pictures and it was a lot of words on the page for me at the time. And she looked at me and she very honestly just said, "This isn't going to be easy, but you can do this, and I think you're going to love it."
wow.
And from that point forward, I was a reader.
Do you remember the name of the book that she presented to you, the Big Kid book?
I wish I remembered all. I remember it was about horses. It was
Oh,
about this girl and a horse, and that's all I can remember. But I'll have to write to her and ask her because I've wondered that same thing as
oh.
throughout the years. But yeah, I was never without a book in my hand as a kid, and it's one of the most beautiful things that I can remember about my childhood.
What was your favorite book as a child?
I do have one that sort of pinpoints it for me. Watership Down by Richard Adams. I
Yeah.
read it when I was pretty young, and it was the first book that, I picked it up and I went, "Oh, a book about bunny rabbits, great." But then as I started to realize that, oh, stories can actually say so much more than what's on the surface, and
Hmm.
there's a lot that goes into it. And actually, I've been meaning to go back and reread it because I haven't read it in probably 15 years. And it'd be wild to go back and see perspective-wise what I would glean from it now.
Can you give us a quick synopsis of it? You said
Uh,
bunnies.
yeah, well, it's very similar to Animal Farm in the way that it's kind of an allegory for humanity and society as a whole. But it's about this warren of bunny rabbits that's displaced from their home, and they go on this journey. And on
Oh,
that journey, they meet other rabbits and other animals and other communities. And as you go through it, it really is all an allegory for community and home and family and what that means and how it can change. And it's very interesting.
and was there a book that changed your
It's
life?
a hard one, but it's a great one. I'll give you two.
Yes.
Um, One of which is I've been doing TV series for a lot of years where I love working on TV series, and it's a thing where you get into a rhythm and a system because when you're making episodes of the same thing, it's kind of there's a process and it's the same, which is great. And I love having that routine and building that family.
Mm.
But then also there's something that from film as well there's a creativity and sort of an experimental nature to it that's very different. I've been studying to be a director as well,
Wow.
and Sidney Lumet, who directed many of the classic films that you look at his resume and are just your mind is blown. He wrote a book on directing called Making Movies,
Mm.
and from the moment I opened that book, it reminded me why I do what I do because you can
Wow.
instantly tell that it was written by a storyteller and
Mm.
reignited this kind of passion in me and this realization that the reason that I do this is because I love telling stories. But also, as like a human being,
Yeah.
a friend gave me The Alchemist a few years ago. There was something about that book. It's been on my list for years, but when I finally sat down to read it, I love that it lets you in this sort of mythical story and it draws you into this world of its own. But then these statements that are so universal and so human and just instantly connect, and they're just these realizations about life and what it means to be human. They just shine through, and it blew my mind. So that's another one that I love.
Wow. Wow. That's so exciting. Basic question. What do you love about reading? I think you kind of covered that in so many ways. So
Well, at its core, what I love about reading is what I love about stories. It's you have this book in your hand and it's such a personal experience, and your imagination and the words on the page just combine to create this fantasy world in your pocket that you can carry around with you. And a book is like a friend that's always there. And it's one of those things that I don't know. As a kid, it's just I have all of these memories of curling up in a corner or sitting outside or being in the car, or no matter where I was, I always had a story with me. And I could
um,
always open the book and dive into that world no matter what else was going on. And it just was always there, and it provided such an activity and an escape, but also just something my mind was never, it was never still. It was always, there was always something happening, and books are just such a magical way to provide that, but in such a uniquely personal way. Yeah, no, my family loves stories and my family loves books, and it's something that everyone in my family reads and loves it. And you know, it's even to this day one of my best friends, he's always telling me about different books he's reading, and so my list just keeps getting longer and longer. But it's something you can not only have for yourself, but you can share with the people that you love. And stories become so personal that you they're a gift in and of themselves that you can give to someone else and say, look, here's this thing that meant so much to me. I want you to have an experience, and then you can share that experience together and talk about it. And one of my friends just started a book club, and I'm so excited because it's like a book club, and I'm very excited to dive in. But it's great. It's such a wonderful thing you can share.
yes, that's so true. Yeah, it deepens relationships and our understanding of ourselves and others. What's the last book that you read or you're currently reading?
It's actually right here. It's very nerdy and kind of obscure, but I listen to a lot of true crime podcasts and supernatural just things, stories, just other stories, right? And stories of any kind, but they reference this book called Witchcraft, Lycanthropy, Drugs, and Disease, and it's an anthropological study that someone did of the sort of anthropological social forces as well as kind of the realities of what was really going on in the 16th and 17th centuries, and it's wild. So it's I don't know, I'm diving in, and it's very technical and anthropological, but I'm fascinated.
I was wondering, how has reading influenced you as an
It's
actress?
one of those things that, because I love reading, and I mean, I love young adult fiction. It's those worlds of fantasy that you can just dive into the mythology, and there's it's a whole world, and it's been so beautifully created and beautifully laid out. Having the chance to bring that to life in a few different ways. I mean, you know, Arrow is based on comic books, and Maze Runner is based on a book series, and then Shadowhunters as well. It's been fascinating to see the different iterations of how things are brought to life, and how that can change. But with Shadowhunters, it was really special because a lot of the books are written from Clary's perspective, from my character's perspective. And so, you know, different cast members took their different ways of getting at it, but I knew that I wanted to read all 6 books because there's something when you have a book that's told from a character's perspective, it informs so much of who they are and of how they see the world and how they feel about other people. And granted, we changed a lot in the series and as the series progressed, but having that as a starting point and a benchmark of something to draw from and something to a starting place, if nothing else, was wonderful, and I loved every minute of it. And it's a real honor to have that responsibility. You know, because I've we've all seen book characters brought to life that we loved in all different iterations, and whether we loved them or we didn't like them, I know what those characters mean to people, and I know how connected you can be to a character in a book. And I just wanted to do justice by the source material that was loved by so many.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Yes, that's so true. I read Maze Runner. Oh my goodness, it was so scary. But
Wild, right?
it's wild, but it was so creative and I couldn't stop reading it. But yeah, I loved Maze Runner. But yeah, that's fantastic. I love that you take your work so seriously that you really care about these characters and you get to know them and as you portray them. Yeah, and it's what a wonderful opportunity to be able to do both, read and to portray.
Yeah.
Um, so, if you could meet any author living or past, who would it be and why?
I had to pick one, it would be Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. I love Sherlock Holmes. I have read every story, every book.
Wow.
I think I was about 13 when I read Hound of the Baskervilles, and
Wow.
I was wrapped. And it's just simply because there's logic to everything, and it
Mhm.
all connects. And it's just mere observation and logic that he uses to solve these situations that seem so impossible. And that blew my mind. And the fact that it all came from the brain of one person, I just want to pick his brain and just go, how did you come up with where? I have so many questions.
Um, and what books are you hoping to read next?
There's so many. I found this list a few weeks ago of F. Scott Fitzgerald made a list back in the day of books that every book lover should read, in his opinion. And
Mm.
it's always been, I've always kind of had this fantasy of one year, I want to dedicate that year and go from beginning to end, I'm going to finish the list this year and read all of the books that F. Scott Fitzgerald says this is what
Oh, yeah.
so anybody who loves books and loves literature should read these 42 books or something.
Oh, that's so cool. I'll try to look for that list and see if I can add that in the description. So if anybody else wants to read along with you,
Yeah, I gotta have a year with a little more time if I'm
I
gonna
know.
dive into that. But it's yeah, I'm just looking forward to it because I love Fitzgerald. I think the way he writes is just so magically beautiful and
Mhm.
strangely dark at times.
Mm.
But it's I just want to see what his brain works.
And you mentioned that you want to become a director in the future. Have you ever also considered writing your own book or story? And if so, what genre would that be?
I've thought about this quite a bit, and I have some friends that are authors as well that have, offered to guide me along the way. I think I could at this point. I don't know what story I would want to tell.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that once I figure it out, I'll be 100% in, but I'm sort of waiting for the story to find me at this point.
What advice would you give to young children when it comes to reading?
Just just do it. Go to a library, go to a bookstore, go to a shelf at in your classroom or at a trade books with your friends.
Mm.
Read as much as you can. Try something new. Walk down the library shelves and pick a book that you think a cover looks interesting. Sit down, read a few pages, and see if it hooks you. Try something new. Try a book that you've never read before. Try something that seems completely strange. The more you read, the more you'll discover, and the more it becomes a journey of just
Mm.
broadening your horizons. And it's wild the things you'll discover. And actually, if I can just add, this just hit me for your elementary school students and all of that. One of my favorite book series when I was younger was called the Magic Treehouse series. But I read them all, and I would read like one a night, and I'd like stay up in my
Oh,
bed with the covers over my head, reading till all hours of the night. Because again, it transports you to another world, and you learn so much. So I always recommend that one to kids.
that's a fantastic series. The kids love it. They're so hooked on it. We will definitely make sure to put those on display and say some of Kat's favorites. Yes. And the Sherlock Holmes too, as well, and all of the other favorites. Thank you so much again, and I hope you get to that list, the Fitzgerald list, soon, and you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure.
If you'd like to learn more about the TV show that Kat McNamara was featured on called Shadowhunters, check it out on Freeform, YouTube, or Amazon. You can also read the books that Shadowhunters is based on. The books are called Mortal Instruments, and the first book is called City of Bones. I hope you enjoyed today's show. I hope this encouraged you to keep reading. Thank you so much. Have a great day.